Good evening, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and Spectrum Channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. If you would like to receive an electronic City Council packet to reference while viewing future broadcasts, please contact the City Clerk's office during business hours or go to the city's website and subscribe to the city's meetings email list. The agenda is also accessible from any mobile device. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Kaden Bosley.
Here.
Laura E. Tobin.
Here.
Michael J. Remy.
Here.
Randy L. Filio.
Here.
Robert C. Williams.
Here.
Edward J. Haas.
Here.
Philip M. Jones.
Present.
Andrew M. Madison.
Here.
Chrissy Roberts. Jacob R. Favalise.
Here.
Brian J. Lake.
Here.
Catherine I. Workman.
Here.
Bettina A. Chadbourne. Thomas F. Powers. Mitchell H. Greenwald.
Here.
Councilor Williams, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have two sets of meeting minutes to consider this evening. One is from November 7th. I'd like to ask for a motion.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to adopt the minutes of the November 7 and November 9 meeting as presented.
Second.
Can we take those simultaneously? Thank you very much. Any comments to either of the sets of minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. It is unanimous. Announcements for this evening. We have two birthdays to celebrate in the month of November. Councilor Bobby Williams. And Councilor Kat Workman. Happy birthday, folks. Two announcements for tonight. One, I want to make a appeal to city councilors to join the city's United Way campaign. Beth Fox has been active in recruiting donations from city staff, and we too can pledge our donations to the United Way to in the name of and the organization of the City of Keene. I've done that, and I hope others have. I know some have. There is a matching opportunity on December 2nd that if you donate on Giving Tuesday, December 2nd, that your contribution will be matched. So if you don't have a matching program at a place of work, this is a great opportunity to double your impact. I really encourage folks to do it, and it'll help the city's goal with all of us pitch in to do that. A second is to announce, and we'll get further information out, but I want to invite the city councilors, city directors, and our charter officers, and their partners or their guests, to one guest, to join me and Melinda Treadwell in hosting a holiday party reception for city staff, and will be greeted by the president at her house with her cabinet. So it's a great opportunity for us to do two things at once, partner with our city, with our college colleagues, but also to have some holiday celebration, which we all deserve after this year. So please remember, December 19th, our council meeting, we will hopefully have a briefer one, and immediately after adjourn over to the Keene State College President's House for a holiday reception. Okay? And that covers my announcements for the evening. At this point, we have a proclamation to issue to the representatives of all 5 city wards in attendance this evening to accept a proclamation recognizing all elected, appointed, and volunteer community members who assisted in the recent general and presidential elections. So if they will come forward. Oh, yes. And you didn't think they were showing up. It's a pretty good crowd. Not quite a field hockey team.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey.
So a proclamation of the city of Keene, whereas the city's elected and appointed elected officers, officials administer our local, state, and national elections to ensure a process that's fair, accurate, and trustworthy, while instilling confidence in the results. And whereas this group of civic-minded individuals is made up of community members who typically put forth an effort that exceeds 16 hours on an election day. And whereas the presidential election held on November 5th, 2024, saw a voter turnout of over 70% citywide, with the 5 city wards registering over 2,500 new voters on election day. And whereas, because of the sheer number of voters wishing to participate in this historic national election, the city needed to reach beyond our staff of 75 election officials to seek out volunteers. And whereas, through this volunteer effort, the city of Keene was fortunate to receive the assistance of an additional 125 community members to work on election day. And whereas this contingent of volunteers was able to assist with keeping the city's polling places running smoothly in various capacities, including greeting and directing, voters entering the polls, registering voters, and assisting voters with checking in for their ballots, all of which lessened the burden on our officials while providing a welcoming and positive experience. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, as mayor, do hereby extend the official congratulations and sincere thank you on behalf of the city of Keene to our citizen volunteers and elected officials for their assistance at the record-breaking 2024 presidential election. Thank you so much for your efforts. As we present the proclamation to each of you, would you please introduce yourselves? And I get to shake your hand, too.
Okay.
Elizabeth Sayer, Ward Clerk 1,
Thank you, Elizabeth.
or Ward 1 Clerk. Thank you.
John Theriault, Ward 5 Clerk.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, Jay.
Linda Mangonis, I was the Ward 1 moderator through 7 presidential elections and am now a selectman.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kathleen Richards, Ward 3 Clerk.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Sydney.
Hi, Cindy McKeon, Ward 3 Moderator.
Tina Chodro, Checklist Supervisor, Ward 4.
Thank you, Tina.
You're next.
Cheryl Khan, Ward 3 Selectman.
Matthew McCann, Ward 2 Moderator.
Matthew. Thank you, Matthew.
Linda Hawes, Ward 2 Checklist Supervisor.
Thank you, Linda.
John McCann, Selectman, Ward 3.
Thanks, John. Cheryl.
Charles Ferrando, Checklist Supervisor, Ward 3.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. A hearty congratulations from all of us. next we have, I'll just remind folks, we aren't going to do nominations this evening, but we will be taking up nominations for 2025 seats as well as renewals at our next council meeting. Moving on to communications.
Master plan.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. I don't want to skip over our presentation of the evening. I'd like to invite Mary Brunner from the Community Development staff to join us with a master plan presentation and update. Thank you, Mary.
Yes. Thank you, Mary Brunner, Senior Planner. And so tonight, I'm going to be giving you an update on the master plan project. If you'll all recall, right now we have a master plan that was adopted in 2010. And so this project is really aimed at both renewing the community vision, which is one of the 2 required components of the master plan, and then updating the document so that it reflects current trends and issues in our community. So with that, I'll dive in. This is just the outline for my presentation. I'm giving an overview of the project, a summary of some public input, and then I wanted to present to you tonight the draft community vision that came out of the first phase of this project. So this project is a long-range planning process. So what that means is that we're looking at about a 15 to 20-year planning horizon, and we're asking a couple of key questions, including what do we want our community to look like, and how do we get there? So the what do we want it to look like piece of that question is the first phase that we just concluded. And there are really 3 things that helped guide this process. We are thinking about the future, so it's future-oriented. It's a very data-driven process. So we have a consultant team with a really great depth of expertise. They've been doing a lot of number crunching for us and really diving into the data around demographics and socioeconomic data and all of that sort of data that you can glean from data sources like the US Census. But it's also very people-focused, and so a lot of the data that we've gathered in phase 1 is actually from the people of Keene themselves. This graphic here just goes over the high-level overview of the steps, the major steps in this first phase of the process. Step 1 was just a lot of the background work that you wouldn't have necessarily seen. It was the project setup, the kickoff meeting with staff, getting the website up and running. Step 2 was doing really in-depth public engagement and outreach. And then step 3 was kind of taking all of that data that we got from steps 1 and 2 and synthesizing it and analyzing it and trying to distill it down into some key themes. And out of that process, at the end of it, we had a future summit and a community vision report. So going into some of the community engagement that was done, towards the beginning of this project, we did a community survey. This was a longer survey, an online survey. It took folks an average of 24 minutes to fill it out, so we got a lot of really thoughtful, great feedback. 648 responses, including a couple of paper surveys that were done. And the consultants spent a really long time going through every single free written response and coding that response and analyzing like what were the key trends and the themes that came out of that survey. So that was a really great piece of data for us to look at. But in addition to that, we've been sending out periodic project newsletters to keep folks updated. So people have the option of signing up either specifically for this project, or if they're just signed up for general updates from the city, they should have been getting updates on this project throughout the process. We held a two-day workshop in late May that had about 60 participants, and that was kind of a deep dive into a future scenario planning exercise that we did. I know several of you in the room were there. Following that workshop, we did a series of visioning sessions with the community, and at the end of those sessions, we had people fill out a heat map survey. So I'll show you those results in a minute. We've also been going on the radio to provide project updates. There were a couple of utility bill inserts that were sent out about the project. We had comment boxes, comment cards, tabling. We also did a flash vote survey that garnered 261 responses. So a lot of great input and feedback. We also did during the Ward Optimization Weeks initiative, we did a series of 5 community nights and had some information about the project out at those. So that was another opportunity. I'm not going to go into this in detail, but I wanted to give you sort of a sense of what the attendees of the workshop and those visioning sessions were looking at. So on your screen is a scenario matrix. They called it a plausible scenario matrix. These are sort of 4 possible future scenarios that are realistic. They could happen, that were explored through that 2-day think tank workshop and then through those visioning sessions. So I'm not going to go into detail here. There is a whole report that came out of that workshop that you can read that explains how these scenarios were developed. But in a nutshell, there were 4 future scenarios. Attendees at each of the visioning sessions got sort of an overview of what those scenarios were, and then they were asked to indicate on a 10 by 10 grid what their most preferred future is, what their least preferred future is, and what they think the expected future of Keene is if we continue doing things as we're doing them today. And so these are this on the screen is the result of all of that input. And this is on the website. You can filter it by the different groups that filled out the survey. But the colors in green is where people indicated that they thought the future of Keene would be expected if we didn't change anything. So the green is the expected future. Red is the least preferred future, and blue is the preferred future for folks. So if I just show the blue, you can kind of see there's a pretty strong consensus among the respondents with what the preferred future should be. And so I'm just going to describe this scenario, which is basically this is the scenario with the most change in it. So it forecasts a future where the community actively and intentionally explores new ways to build opportunities that position the community as environmentally sustainable, innovative, and forward-looking. So I'm not going to read the whole vision statement, but there is a vision report on the website where you can read this vision statement. But some key takeaways is that in this draft vision, the community is welcoming to newcomers with a reputation of inclusivity and collaboration. There's strong investment in future-oriented infrastructure that prepares the community to adapt to climate change. Housing, utilities, and transportation options are expanded, and local character and culture is celebrated. The local economy expands with businesses and ventures that span from the local scale all the way up to the international scale. So those are kind of the key takeaways from the draft vision that emerged from all of that outreach. And from that, we worked with the Master Plan Steering Committee to identify the key themes. And so those are up on the screen. So they include livable housing, thriving economy, connected mobility, vibrant neighborhoods, adaptable workforce, and flourishing environment. And you can see under each of those key themes, there's a little bit of subtext to kind of give you a little bit more context as to what was really meant by that. So under livable housing, it says expand enticing housing options for all. So not only this pillar isn't just focused on have more housing, there was also discussion about what type of housing and making sure that it's the type of housing that's desirable and that's going to meet a variety of different needs. For some folks, that might mean having a house that's, further out, but they have more privacy and space. For others, they might want a home that's closer to the downtown and more walkable and close to amenities. So really that whole span of housing options. With the thriving economy pillar, this is growing a dynamic economy of the future that spans local to international. A lot of the input that we received from everyone in the community revolved around having both a really strong and vibrant small business community, as well as having those really key and important employers in our community that are larger and kind of more anchor employment centers. So I'm not sure if I'm describing that very well, but we had a number of people talk about the need to make sure that those entities stay or that we bring new ones to the community if some of them leave, just because those larger businesses help sustain not only our small business community and our nonprofit sector, but they contribute to the arts, they contribute to all of these different things that make our community a vibrant and thriving place to be. With connected mobility, this originally started out as being very focused on mobility within Keene itself, but then we very quickly heard that there's also a strong desire to make sure that Keene is more connected to the broader region and other regional centers like Boston and Brattleboro and Manchester. So there's a component here of being connected to other communities, and then within our own community, making sure that we have safe transportation options. So not just convenient options for getting around by car, but also other transportation options like bicycling, walking. There was some desire for public transit, and also a really strong desire to really lean into the rail trails and the other like recreation networks that we have here, and really trying to capitalize on those as a strength that we already have in our community. With vibrant neighborhoods, this one was really around supporting all of the different unique character areas that we have in Keene, including our downtown. So this is kind of the pillar where you would see that would include the downtown area. And it's support safe and healthy community neighborhoods that reflect their unique culture and identity. And then the last two, so we have adaptable workforce, foster a future-ready, abundant, and diverse workforce. This is where a lot of the education and training and trying to attract new people to move to the area, those are kind of the topics that would fall under this one. And then last, but definitely not least, flourishing environment. The subtext here is champion environmental stewardship and climate action. So we have a really strong history in Keene of conservation and protecting our water quality and protecting our steep slopes from development, and so and climate action. And so this is a pillar that would kind of encompass all of that. I guess, are there any questions about the 6 pillars before I go on? Okay, great. So for next steps in the project, now that those 6 pillars have been identified, the draft vision is out, and the report is up on the website, we will be launching online discussion boards. So we have launched 2 of them, so I believe it's the housing and thriving economy are already up on the website, which is, again, KeeneMasterPlan.com, or you can get there from the City of Keene homepage. And we're going to be putting up a discussion board for each of those 6 pillars or themes that I just went through. And we're asking members of the community, anyone really who is interested in weighing in, to share their ideas with us. What do they think is a good idea? What's going well today? Or what do they think we should try? What are some examples that you've seen elsewhere? We're really trying to gather as much feedback as possible through these online discussion boards. And for folks who aren't comfortable using a computer or just don't have one or don't want to use one, we're going to have staff at the public library by the main entrance on December 11th, 12th, and 13th from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And we're going to be set up with a TV screen, so and we'll have the discussion boards up so that if somebody wants to come and add to the discussion, but they don't have their own computer or they don't want to use a computer, we can add their comments for them. And then we're also, right now, we're forming task forces for each of those 6 pillars. And those task forces, we're going to have a kickoff meeting in early December, and then there's going to be 3 meetings in January, February, and March of each of those task forces. And that they're going to be focused on implementation, like how do we get to that vision within each of those 6 topic areas. And those ideas will be shared back with the Master Plan Steering Committee. This is just another graphic that sort of gives an overview of the process. And then that's it.
If there are questions, we've got a good committee working on this. And they will provide further information back to the council and the city, right?
Yes, I believe so. Once we have a draft plan put together, there's going to be another future summit, most likely in late May or early June. So that's hopefully going to be widely publicized and well attended, and we hope to see you there as well. But once it gets through that process, we'll be bringing it to you to start the adoption and approval process.
Councilor House?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Mary, are the discussion boards moderated, or are they just collecting comments, or how are they working?
So they are not moderated. I believe we are not able to moderate them as a public body or entity, yeah.
Councilor Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mary, I want to thank you and staff for putting this together and following it along. I know you've had some disruptions in staff, and you've kept the flow going, and I think this is great. And I think I've been to all the meetings but one, and I like the way it's going. Just so the rest of the council and public know, the pillars can still be adjusted. They're not cement pillars.
That's correct. They are not cement pillars.
They can be adjusted. There's still time for that. And I was waiting for you to say my one favorite word, which is one of the next steps coming up, implementation. That's what I've been asking for all along. That's the one thing we didn't do with our last master plan. It was a good plan, but that was the one thing that I had asked for. But thank you very much for the presentation and for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jones. Okay, Mary, thank you so much for your presentation. We'll look forward to further updates. Okay, now we can move on to communications.
This evening, our one and only communication is from Councilor Williams, and he's raising an issue that's been discussed on the floor for the last year or so, and it's relative to creating a policy on the discharge of fireworks. And it would entail developing policy guidelines for the issuance of fireworks display permits that would limit the number of fireworks displays to be authorized in any single location during a calendar year.
And we will refer this letter to Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee.
And starting with our reports, we do have quite a few this evening. So we start off with the celebration for the release of the film Jumanji, and with a lengthy motion, which reads, on a vote of 5-0, the Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee recommends the Greater Monadnock Collaborative be granted a license to use downtown city property from Friday, April 11th through Sunday, April 13th to host a celebration of the 30th anniversary of the film Jumanji, conditional upon the following: the signing of a standard revocable license and identification agreement, providing a certificate of liability insurance for the city of Keene listed as an additional insured in the amount of $1 million, having the petitioner absorb the cost of any city services provided to the event, and payment of any remitting payment within 30 days of invoicing. The petitioner is going to be permitted to conduct a road race in reenactment of the Stampede depicted in the film, and a parade to occur on Main Street on Saturday, April 12th at noon, with assistance from the police department to temporarily close certain streets or rights of way intersecting the Stampede route. And the petitioner is permitted to close a portion of Church Street from Main Street to just east of the Hannah Grimes parking lot each day of the event from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. to allow food trucks to participate, with the road being reopened to traffic at the close of each day. Additional road closures may include any portions of other streets needed to facilitate detour routes. The full extent of road closures and detour routes shall be agreed upon with city staff. The petitioner is being permitted to use areas on the sidewalk adjacent to the Colonial Theater on Friday, April 11th, as well as the Central Square Common, Railroad Square, and Gilboa Avenue, along the bike path on Saturday, April 12th, for other planned activities. They are allowed to place porta potties in city parking spaces with specific locations to be determined in conjunction with staff from April 11th to April 14th. They do need to be changed together and affixed to ensure they are not vandalized. There needs to be a submittal of signed letters of permission from all the property owners for use of their property. And in closing, this permission is granted subject to attainment of any necessary licenses or permits, and compliance with all laws, and compliance with any recommendations of staff.
Thank you. Counselor Bosley for a motion.
Thank you. I move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Bosley and seconded by Counselor Jones. Counselor Bosley for the committee.
Thank you. So there's not a lot for me to add after we read a motion like that. All of my notes were in that motion. But I think the one thing that I would like to point out is that the petitioners did talk a lot about tying this event to some mental health awareness as well, which I think is really important. And, you know, the late Robin Williams and associating some mental health awareness with this event. They did really work with us because of the downtown closures that are coming next year, and finding a date that would allow them access to the whole of Main Street for the Stampede, which I think the event would be not the same without it. So we were all in support of it, and we're excited to see it.
Questions, comments from counselors? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Our second communication is an informational report relative to proposed amendments.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Our second committee report is informational, again, from Planning, Licenses, and Development. It is relative to a correspondence from Jared Goodell about proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance. Mr. Goodell took the committee's advice, and later in your packet, he has submitted the formal application and ordinance.
And we'll file this letter as informational.
Again, an informational report before PLD. They heard a presentation from Kenneth Cost about potential for mixed-use development on Gilboa Avenue land. So recommending acceptance of informational.
And we will accept this letter recommendation. Actually, this one needs a vote, doesn't it? Nope. Okay. We'll accept this as informational. Just want to say on Mr. Goodell's letter that is the application requires an ordinance change, and that's where it will be considered.
Next, we have a Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee report about several amendments to the Rules of Order. Some are on the floor for adoption this evening, and others have just recommendations for further action. For your convenience, we did place copies of all 4 amendments in paper on your desk so that you wouldn't have to scroll back and forth in your online packet.
So I'm going to turn this over to Counselor Bosley in a moment, as these recommendations are coming from her committee. I just want to, for the public's purpose, recap how we got to these adjustments in Rules of Order. We started back in January with a council workshop identifying some items that we might want to discuss, and then we had a subsequent workshop in which we did discuss those changes. It took some time for us to produce a cycle where those changes could be considered by our city attorney. And then, once we had drafts of adjustments to our rules of order, they began to be shared with the Planning Licenses and Development Committee in September, considered again in October and November, bringing us to where we are today. I will just add again that the council's rules of order are something that is set in 39 different sections. They're there to help guide the council's actions, and these have been in place for a long time, dating back to the 1970s with adjustments. So there's I guess where I'm heading with this, it's a long process to consider a change in rule of order, and appropriately so. We've operated under rules of order for quite a number of years, and we can always be taking these up again with additional considerations as either state law changes or other considerations councilors wish to bring forward for some consideration. But it does take a long time. So we're here tonight to see if we have made progress on some of these, and where we still have more work to do on some others. So with that, thank you, Councilor Bosley, for leading us.
Great, thank you. Clerk, do you want me to read my first motion, or is that how we're going?
That would be fine. Thank you, Counselor.
So the first motion that I'm going to read, normally we move to carry out the intent of a committee report, but tonight I'm going to actually read the committee's motion out, because I think it's just going to help us along in our conversation. I would like to move that the city attorney present to the city council for first reading proposed changes to section 15 of our rules of order, incorporating the changes suggested by the mayor and incorporating the revisions that PLD's committee discussed at their meeting on November 13th, 2024.
Second.
And moved by Councilor Bosley and seconded by Councilor Jones. Councilor Bosley.
Thank you. So this is in regards to our voting and conflict of interest rule. This is one of those rules that we've been working on for quite some time, and we brought back for reconsideration. I think that there was some intention to align our rule with the state's House Bill 1388, which has since been adopted and has become RSA 14-B for the definitions and 14-C for their conflict of interest rule. And if you want to review those, I think that'd be a great idea as this conversation continues. But what came out of PLD was an honest attempt to adopt some of that language that helps clarify a lot of our intention in our own conflict of interest rule, but I don't know that we have it perfect yet. So we would like to see the city attorney's attempt at creating a draft for us so that we can continue to work through this and hear what your questions are and try to get this to where we all think it's going to be a good fit for everyone.
Have a motion and second on the floor. Any comments from councilors? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously, and we'll refer that to city attorney for a first reading draft. Thank you. Recognize Councilor Bosley.
Thank you again. So this is section 17. Again, I'm going to read out our motion here. It is moved to recommend the adoption of the Rules of Order Amendment, Section 17 motions. So tonight, you guys should all have this. Oh, thank you.
That's moved by Councilor Bosley and seconded by Councilor Greenwald. Thank you.
Tonight, you should all have this chart that talks about the motions that we call out in our own rules of order. These are not the only motions we will ever use. If we don't have motions written into these rules, we defer to Robert's rules. And I think that it's good for us to understand that. And I did some research myself, and I checked, and accepting something as informational has been a topic, and that is something that's allowed under Robert's rules. So it's not that we've ever been doing anything that's inconsistent, but I think what PLD wanted to see is that it be called out directly in our own rules as something that a counselor can request. It would require a second, it would be a simple majority, and it would be debatable on the floor if there was any question about it.
Questions from counselors? Counselor Greenwald.
Thank you, Your Honor. Maybe, get my lights on. Just to add to it, there's a lot of nuances to the rules of order that I think we can all learn from. And in speaking with Counsel Bosley, Counsel Filio, and a lot of years of dealing with it, a lot of small factors. And I think it'll be very, very fruitful for us to have a council workshop to really understand these little subtleties and so that we really know what's going on. But adding this one line puts into writing what we've used legally and correctly about informational.
Thank you. Further questions, comments? Seeing none? All those in favor of changes to section 17, please raise your hand.
Roll.
Oh, this is an adoption. Yes, sorry.
Council Bosley.
Yes.
Council Tobin.
Yes.
Council Rennie.
Yes.
Council Phillips.
Yes.
Council Williams.
Yes.
Council Hawes.
Yes.
Council Jones.
Yes.
Council Madison.
Yes.
Council Favelis.
Yes.
Council Lake.
Yes.
Council Workman.
Yes.
Council Chadwell.
Yes.
Council Greenwald.
Yes.
And we'll follow the same procedure on section 25. Counselor Bosley for a motion.
All right. Amendment 3, move to recommend the adoption of Rules of Order Amendment, Section 25, Communications.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Bosley, second came from Counselor Filio, Counselor Jones. Counselor Jones. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to get back to Counselor Greenwald's comments. I think that I do have some interest in what he was suggesting, and I think that it's, after my intensive review of these rules of orders in just these few sections, it's become very clear to me that there are a lot of us that have been operating under certain assumptions, and that there are nuances in these rules that we need to be very clear on. And so we're going to come back to that. But section 25, I promise, is very simple. We've stricken any language from this section that was controversial, and we've basically added a housekeeping item for the clerk's office that just reads out that the communications will only be accepted until 4 p.m. on Tuesdays, so that there's a time frame associated with the clerk's accepting of new communications.
Okay, we have a motion second. Any comments on this section 25? Seeing none, would the clerk call the roll?
Council Bosley.
Yes.
Council Bosley, I'm sorry, I didn't have my mic on. Council Bosley.
Yes.
Council Tobin.
Yes.
Council Remy.
Yes.
Council Phillips.
Yes.
Council Williams.
Yes.
Council Haas.
Yes.
Council Jones.
Yes.
Council Madison.
Yes.
Council Favelis.
Yes.
Council Lake.
Yes.
Council Workman.
Yes.
Council Chadbourne.
Yes.
Council Greenwald.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. And just to point out the obvious here, that this item in its entirety had been presented to the council for both the first and second reading, and that's what leads to then the final vote this evening. Moving on to section 26.
So section 26, the motion that came out of the committee was to move that the city attorney present to the city council for first reading proposed changes to section 26 of the city council's rules of order, review of items of business with respect to motions submitted by a city councilor regarding matters that are germane or non-germane.
Moved
Is that a
by
second?
Counselor
Are you ready
Bosley
for a second?
and seconded by Counselor Jones. Thank you.
didn't know when she ended.
Yes, sorry. Okay, so now we have come to our Fourth Amendment for rules, and probably the one that garnered the most conversation and the most debate at our committee. This motion came with a mixed message from the committee. There was a 3-2 vote on an amendment that Councilor Williams had introduced to revise the language that was submitted to council for first reading initially a few weeks back. That initial language, for me particularly, I liked the original version of, because it clarified for the public's purpose what our intentions might be with, and what the process looked like for a letter that was potentially non-germane to the city or to the state. When, I think that there has been some confusion from individuals when they're submitting letters, that they think that their letter might not make it in front of the council. And I have spent an extraordinary amount of time reading through these sections creating flowcharts and looking at data and trying to understand exactly where letters could potentially go awry. In all cases, as far as I can tell, barring some information that's going to come from some workshop, information is either presented on our agenda or we are reported back to on that information. Nothing completely disappears. Even when something is referred to the city manager, it is her responsibility to report back to us the outcome of all of those letters. So I think that when the conversation was discussed at PLD, whether we wanted to see that language contained inside an amendment to Section 26, there was some consensus from the committee around that. At some point during the conversation, that turned to have a little bit more elaboration added, and Councilor Williams was interested in what would happen after that letter was placed on the council agenda. And his concern was that he would like for every letter to have a vote associated with it. And Councilor Jones and I believe, were of the mind that we have a process where things are potentially accepted as informational, and that there is also a process using Section 17 that allows councilors to create a point of order and ask for a vote, and that we've been operating under this process very properly for many, many years. So that's why that you saw, excuse me. Sorry. So that's why you saw a mixed vote come out of PLD. So I'm sorry. I'm going to hold you up.
This conversation may go on for a little bit. If you want to take a couple-minute break, we can do that.
No, I'm okay. I think I just have to clear whatever is in my chest. All right. So, so we have a process that we have used very appropriately for many, many years to allow something, if it's being accepted as informational, and there are members of this council who are not in agreement with that, to call a point of order and ask for a vote on that. Councilor Jones and I were in agreement that we were comfortable with that process, but we had a 3-2 vote, and so it came out of committee with a request for a revision by our city attorney. I would love to hear the debate on this topic here tonight, but what I would like to implore all of you is to consider waiting for a workshop that Councilor Greenwald and I have both suggested that we have probably right after the first of the year. And for us to really understand the nuances and what powers we do wield from our own rules the way they're written. I think just having conversations with my attorney, our city attorney, over the last week have taught me several things that I did not understand, that we have control over here in this room. Outside of just accepting something as informational and calling for a vote, there are many other opportunities that we have as counselors to redirect the conversation, to question potentially the chairs, referring something to a committee if we don't agree with what committee it's being referred to. Those are all things that we, as council members, have say in. And I think that it doesn't always become obvious the way that our process looks, that you have authority over some of these items. But I think we really need to sit down with our city attorney and for him to be able to educate us on what is actually in this document before we start making additional changes. I think that the process that we have, if we vote no on this motion tonight, brings us right back to our original Section 26, which has worked and served us. And I'm comfortable with that language remaining until we can get through a workshop and really stop and spend some time and think about whether this is an appropriate change.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Filio, then Remy,
Thank you, Your Honor.
and Haas.
I spoke to Council Bowes a little bit too, and Council Greenwald, and I think most of you know I do take their rules of order seriously. I try to pay attention to them. One thing that I got out of this is that I think we're trying to fix something that wasn't broke, and I think a lot of reasoning for that is because probably not a good understanding from, I'm not going to point anybody out, but maybe from all of us, that we don't really understand the rules of order and the power the council wields. Obviously, the mayor has, purview of certain things, but in the end, the council always has the final vote. We always have the final power. And if you know the rules of order, you'll know it's always been that way. Now, I know there was one issue that came up and it died for lack of a second. But that's true with any rule of order on here. You don't have a second, we're moving on, okay? So, but they did fix that a little bit because you're going to see now we'll accept an item as informational. Still takes a second required. Now it's a simple majority rather than, debating with the mayor. But as I look at these rules of order, there are things like, did you know that if something's laid on the table, any councilor can move to pull that up at any time, as long as you have a second? If anything's postponed indefinitely, you can make the motion to postpone it. You can also make the motion to pull it back up with a second at any time. So you have to understand the power that you wield. But if you don't know the rules of order, you don't know the power that you wield, okay? Knowledge is king here. You have to know. I learned as a young city councilor to learn the rules of order because some of the other councilors knew them way better than I did, and I'd sit there and think, I don't even know if he's BSing me or not. So you learned them, you read them, and you knew what the rules of order were. It was almost required back in the early days. You knew these by heart, even if you didn't bring a copy of them with you, because somebody would always pull a rule of order up. Doesn't happen too much anymore. I'll occasionally call a point of order, but it's up to all of you to know if I'm BSing you on a point of order. Because if you don't know what the point of order is, and if I'm really within my rights, if nobody's going to challenge me, then you don't know. Because the point of order, the initial point of order doesn't need a second. The point of order can be directed right at the mayor or the city attorney. So as long as I'm one step ahead, or any councilor is one step ahead of the rest of the council, you have the advantage. You need to know, okay? So even though all of this came back from a letter that was written, and there was some debate whether it should be heard or not, that particular night, the councilor didn't get a second. If that second had come through, then it would have just been a matter of, a majority of the council which way you want to go with it. As it is with everything, a majority of the council rules. So on that particular night, if that second had come through, it would have been a majority of the council decides where it goes. It was always there to be brought forward. It just needed a majority of the council. But a majority of the council that night, 14 of us, decided not to second the motion. That's where you gave up your power. You gave up your power because you didn't second the motion. It didn't need a rewrite. The power's always been there. You just have to know where it is and in the wording. So read these things. One thing I've always done as a counselor, and it'll be the same with this city attorney, I go to the city attorney and I'll make an appointment and we'll go down every rule of order and I'll make notes because I want to make sure that I know them well. Anytime there's a change. Tom Mullins and I have talked for hours on the phone in his office about before I come to a meeting, if I have a gut feeling I'm gonna pull a rule of order up, I'm gonna know that I'm gonna do the right thing, just in case somebody challenges me on it. So I know I'm repeating myself here, but knowledge is king. Now, getting back to what Councilor Bosey said on these others, I mean, obviously the first few went through without debate, that's fine, nothing major right there. On this last one, and I was at PLD, and PLD couldn't figure out what to do with it, which tells me if 5 people couldn't come to a consensus, 15 aren't coming to a consensus tonight. We could argue this for hours, and it's not gonna come out correct, because we're all gonna be asking questions. What if, how come? My recommendation on section 26, for now, leave it alone. Just leave it alone for now. Set up a workshop for rules of order again, because obviously we need it, and especially on this particular rule of order. Now, we meet with the city attorney. You can ask your questions, you can ask your opinions, not on the council floor. There's nothing worse than trying to change a rule of order on the council floor, because we have to vote. And there's gonna be 15 of us, especially like I said, it comes out of committee at a 3-2. So what's gonna come out of here in 8-7 and 9-6? Of course, we have a couple councilors missing. The rules of order are too important just to wheel and deal on the floor. If we just keep it the way it is, next month's December. We roll into January, we'll sit with the city attorney, and then all of us ask questions when we're not pressured to vote that night. You say, what is your opinion on this? What is your opinion on this sentence? What about this word? Because as you know, each word means something on a rule of order, kind of like the Constitution. Does if, and, or they, what does that word mean? It was the same with the rules of order, and this is what we're defined by. So, I know I'm babbling a little bit too long here, is A, read the rules of order and start to understand them, and B, on this one, keep it the way it is. Let's do a workshop, let's sit with the city attorney, let's come back and get it right, and not come up with a 8-5, 9-6, or whatever on the council floor, and then 2 weeks later have somebody reconsider because they didn't get it right. Thank you.
And just to make it really clear, by the time we get to these, it takes a 10 vote, and it's of the elected council, so it's 15 voting members. It requires 10 to carry a rule of order. But that's not what's on the table tonight. What's on the table is a simple majority vote relative to asking the attorney for if she's to be drafting in accordance with an outcome from the committee. Councilor Remy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't say this very often, I generally agree a lot with what Councilor Filio said. That's the punchline of that was supposed to be, but I don't know. I like the language that was in the original motion that went, the one that's sitting on our desk. For anybody who hasn't read it, hopefully everybody in here has, communications requesting that the city council consider matters that may not be germane to either the state of New Hampshire or the city, or over which the city council may lack the authority to take action, shall be placed on the city council agenda for a determination by the city council as to whether or not to accept the communication as informational. What I like about this is it actually doesn't change anything. It makes it very clear what our process is. Our process is that it can come in and we determine if it's informational. To the point around clarity around our powers as a council, when the mayor refers something as informational, my understanding is he's actually suggesting we refer it as informational or accept it as informational. And by us not speaking, by consent, we're saying, yeah, that's okay. When he says we're gonna send it to PLD, he's suggesting we send it to PLD, because he doesn't actually get to make motions. We're making that motion. So when we sent that as informational, we as a council accepted that letter that we're using as the example as informational. This clarifies what that process is and that we have the authority to accept as informational those things that we find non-germane, to make it really clear to the public so we don't end up with a similar issue as last time. My recommendation, and what I'm actually gonna see if I get a second on it, is move to amend the motion before the council to be moved that the, make sure I get it right, move to recommend the adoption of the Rules of Order Amendment, Section 26, review of items of business as presented originally to the PLD committee.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on an amendment. So at this point,
So this would be-
you have spoken to the amendment, or do you wish to speak further?
Yeah, so speaking to the amendment, my request to amend it is basically to go back to clarifying our process, clarifying our rules. And honestly, if we don't do anything with this and we if this amendment goes through, then we're voting to change it like this. And if we don't get 10 votes, then it stays the way it is. And we don't have the city or the city attorney going through and trying to draft something that requires us as a council, which the current direction is, us as a council have to take a vote on everything we accept as informational. We have to make a motion, make a second, and take a vote on everything that comes through here as informational as part of a communication. Because functionally, we're saying it's not germane. So,
Thank you. And so just on our process, this amendment to essentially replace the motion with this amendment is a simple majority vote. Then once that's on the floor, because that's what was the first reading, that would require 10 votes to pass, which, given the makeup of the committee tonight, with 2 short, it would take 10 of 13 people to vote in favor. Does the second wish to address this?
Yes, I guess. So I was taking the path of least resistance and definitely trying to simplify this. If you look at my notes on this one tonight, you can see that I had a 1A, a 1B, a 1C, because this is very complicated, what we're talking about right now and what Councilor Remy is putting before you. But I'm not unhappy with Councilor Remy's request, which is why I seconded it. I think that for me, the language that was presented for a first reading at council several weeks back that Councilor Remy is referring to, that's on your desk this evening, that language was what was originally proposed to PLD for consideration. And I don't want to speak for the rest of the committee, but I was also comfortable with that language. I felt like it was an upgrade to Section 26, but I don't believe Section 26, the way it sits today, is a problem. So I'm perfectly happy with either of those outcomes. I don't think we're ready to have the city attorney spend any additional time rewriting this rule, but to have either Section 26 remain or Section 26 as amended for first reading in our prior council meeting, I would be happy with either of those to happen this evening. So I can support this amendment, and I really would hope that you guys would just consider how you feel about that additional language, and we'll find out.
We'll find out. Okay, we've got Councilor Haas, Councilor Jones, Councilor Williams. Here we go.
Thank you, Your Honor. Boy, I agree completely with my Councilor Remy and Councilor Filial, and I disagree completely with one of them. I'm not sure which one yet. I look forward to the erudite comments from everyone else. But what happens here is, as Councilor Greenwald pointed out, that there's an education going on, and we get into patterns of how we behave and how we go along and how things work, and we just live in those patterns. But every now and then something comes up that challenges those patterns. And so this whole exercise that we've gone through that may seem burdensome and may end up being not necessary, that will revert to the original wording and determine that does everything we need it to do, but it's been an education as to how to work that original wording now. So as Councilor Buzzley just said, probably either of these is good. One has more words in it than the other, and more words always can end up tripping us up in other ways that we haven't anticipated yet. As Councilor Filial says, the other works as long as we know how to make it work. So I look forward to all your comments. I hope there aren't many people that are going to comment, and we can move along here. But we're in a good place, and the exercise alone has been worthwhile. I look forward to more exercises like this in the future. Thank you.
Councilor Jones, Councilor Williams, Councilor Madison, and Councilor
no.
Favalese. So yes, we do have everyone will chime in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Don't you love it when somebody gets up and stands and gives comments saying, I hope there's no more comments?
It's a guarantee.
Can I just ask for clarity? So now we're asking for the motion that was reworded by staff, but not the amendment put in it by committee. Is that is that correct?
That's correct. The motion that went through first reading, sent to PLD for its November meeting, and actually was with the PLD committee in both October and November. It was, I think it was, came for first reading in September.
Okay, may I continue? Yeah.
Please.
So I do agree with that then, okay. But I still think it might be proper to have that workshop. I think there's a lot of things we can learn from this. If I ask 10 counselors the definition of germane and non-germane, we're gonna get 10 different definitions. And there's something that I brought up the last time this came around, is we never look at it from the taxpayer's side. We never put a value on this. Staff time has a value. Maybe we can't give an exact number, but maybe during that workshop, we can show the process that staff goes through to work on. Somebody asks for a resolution declaring war on Canada, you know, how much time does that staff put into there? And although we won't get an exact value, we could get an idea of what it takes to do that. So I think that should be a part of the workshop, is representing the taxpayer, putting a value on this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Williams?
Yeah, it was my amendment, and so I support my own amendment, and I'll be voting against this one. You know, the reason was it just didn't seem quite fair to the petitioner that they write a letter to the city council expecting some action and then don't get a response, basically. And in order for them to get a response, they would have to have arranged with a city councilor ahead of time to plead their case. And, you know, that's an extra burden that we're asking on that organization, which may be an organization just figuring stuff out. I want to give them every opportunity to, you know, to have their voice heard. And I think that requiring an affirmative vote to say that if we are going to take this as informational for the reason that it's not germane, I think that's a valuable thing to do. You know, there's been a lot of controversy about what germane means. I don't think we've agreed on it yet, which is why I think it should come to a vote, and it should be an automatic vote rather than one that requires a counselor and a second to come up with it. However, I do like the idea of a workshop discussion, and I kind of want to see, you know, what the city attorney would come up with for the amendment so that we could compare the two and discuss, you know, which is better. But I think that conversation probably should come after our workshop. So we'll see if I get a second here, but
I'm sorry, if there's an amendment on the floor.
I'm proposing to table it.
You can't.
Until after the workshop. So, anyone?
If I may, we do have a motion that was made and then an amendment to the motion. So we do need to close out the amendment to the motion first.
So then we could, okay,
You can't stack amendments.
okay. Well, we'll see how it goes.
You can't stack it. You gotta deal with the amendment first.
Okay.
You ready for more?
I have an order. So, we have Councilor Madison.
My question was just Counselor Jones's clarifying question, so.
Okay. And Councilor Fabelez.
Yeah, thank you. I also have a clarifying question. I'm also not sure that I have as good an understanding as I thought about the precedence of motions, because I did think a motion to postpone would take precedence over a main motion or amendment to it. But I'm not going to raise that as a point of order because I do want to get my question answered.
You can if you want.
There is a section in the Rules of Order that is, or a section within this section of the Rules of Order, just to go back to a point that Councilor Remy had raised that I'm not sure I agree with. So the idea that the mayor is assuming a motion from the council to refer something to a committee. The text of this section reads that all items to be placed on the city council agenda for the first time shall be referred by the mayor as appropriate. So that to me is different than something like a motion to adjourn, which is just assumed at the end of the meeting by the mayor. And so if we're going to be getting into what I think Councilor Filio was hoping to avoid tonight, which is asking these kinds of questions on the floor and doing this, I want to make sure that we have a real good understanding as a council of what the process is that exists now, what the process would be that we're voting on. So I'm going to look to the city attorney for that, because the way that I read the rule, I don't think Councilor Remy, I don't agree with that interpretation.
Thank you for the question. I was thinking that as well. You are correct. The rule does allow the mayor to refer. And it's not, doesn't take the same form necessarily as a motion. But his description of how the council can react to that was accurate, which is if that's not the direction that the council as a body wants to take, it can be either challenged or called for a vote. I do want to backtrack also to Councilor Williams. My apologies. The city manager helped follow the rule. Lay on the table does take precedence over a motion to amend. So if you do want to renew that, we can take that up instead of this conversation right now.
All right.
Does require a second.
Second,
And
anyone?
we'll take a
We're gonna do this again?
majority.
Thank you.
Just a point of order, Mr. Mayor.
I'll take a
Point of
order,
order can be taken.
Yeah, just real quickly that I
If it
think that,
is.
well, so I had heard Councilor Williams' motion more as a motion to postpone to a time certain than a motion to table. And so I just want to make sure that that is,
Yes, thank you for that. You can table to a date certain, or you can
Or we
table
can set it.
indefinitely, but
Or we
same,
can-
same priority.
Could the council clarify his motion, please?
Let me, as we do that, we don't have a date for a council workshop, so to set to a date certain is a little uncertain. Tabling, we can always take it off the table as we've talked about.
I'm listening for advice here.
Before we make that decision, I would like to point out that tabling is not debatable. That's right. And postponing is debatable, so Councilor Williams.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Tabling is not debatable and postponing is debatable, so if we're going to have a conversation about it, you need to make a decision that.
So this is a question to the chair that you're asking, is that, you're asking, is it debatable? It is not debatable, is your point.
It's just Councilor Williams speaking.
Correct.
He
Okay,
has
so
raised
if I postpone definitely, like, what does definitely mean? Does that mean, can I say definitely after the workshop? Or is there a date?
You say indefinitely, too.
I'll tell you my opinion, the intent of definitely is to give the public notice of when it's coming up again, so you give a definite date. Indefinitely, it just stays on the table indefinitely, it's not often used.
And if it is tabled, it is something that gets carried to future meetings that a counselor can at any point then say, I'd like to take that off the table.
I think I want to go with the table.
Okay. So we have a motion to table. This is non-debatable unless there are further points of order, which need to be just that. Okay.
Okay, I'll throw you a point of order. I'm lost. Could you please tell us where we are?
So the vote that we are considering, we have a motion with an amendment before us. We can continue to debate those. If you wish to debate if you wish to debate the amendment before us, which is back to the original, you will vote against the tabling motion. If you wish to postpone or table this item 26 till a future date, you will vote in favor of the tabling motion.
Thank you.
This better be a point of order.
Huh.
Thank you.
You gonna say
All right.
roll
Do you want we can just take a roll call on this. I'm sorry, just take a hand on this. Okay. All right. All those in favor of tabling, raise your hand.
Wait a minute, we've got some stragglers here, so keep them up, please.
1, 2, 3, 4. We have 7 in favor of table. And all those opposed to tabling? We have six in favor of tabling. So we have
It's to the same place.
tabled the motion.
The amendment.
So you have your existing rule of order in place.
We do.
Yes.
Uh,
Welcome to the rabbit hole.
Counselor Favlis.
Well, thank you. Just a clarifying question about, that may result in another motion, if depending on the answer. Are we now back to consideration of the motion made by Counselor Bosley the entire time?
No.
Okay.
Attorney, I want to check that.
No, we're not. It's,
We have tabled 26.
that's right.
Counselor Filio.
This is just a comment. You all just made my case. We're still looking around, people saying, where the hell are we? And that's exactly what I didn't want us to do. All we had to do was vote on the motion to leave it the way it was and set up a workshop. That's it. That's all we needed to do. But now we're tabled, which, by the way, can get pulled by another counselor off the table anytime you want. So read your rules of order and be ready for that. But like I said, you just made a motion. You don't even know the motion we made. We're still looking down. People are still reading the rules of order. You made my case. Thank you very much.
And if any of the 7 wish to reconsider, you need to do it in this meeting.
That's also in the rules of order. Very good. Yep. Yep.
Okay, motion is tabled. We move on to further business.
All right. So, we are at item D5, just to sort of give us a reference point.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
We're at item D5 to give you a reference point in your packet, and it's a Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to the acceptance of donations for the holiday family sponsorship. On a vote of 4-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the manager be authorized to accept donations associated with the city's 2024 holiday sponsorship program.
This is a motion for Counselor Remy.
Move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Remy and seconded by Counselor Chadbourne. Counselor Remy for the committee.
Thank you. So this is an annual program. This is a really great program for the holiday family sponsorships. So this is to allow the city to accept and disperse those donations as appropriate. I'm going to be a lot shorter than Tom usually is.
Thank you, appreciate it. Any comments from counselors? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Next item, again from Finance Organization and Personnel Committee, relative to the cable franchise agreement. On a roll call vote, 5-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the city manager be authorized to negotiate and execute a renewal cable television franchise agreement with Spectrum Northeast LLC.
Counselor Remy for a motion.
Move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Remy, seconded by Counselor Lake.
Thank you.
Counselor Remy.
So, I'm glad to be back with you guys. This one was roll call because I was online, so glad we don't have to do roll call for everything. So this is our cable franchise agreement. This actually has already expired, but the current rules allow for this to continue under the existing agreement until the new agreement has been negotiated. This would actually be a 20-year agreement. It would, as the number of people signing up for cable is shrinking, this is changing the rules a little bit. It's actually adding some good pieces around. You can be a little further from the cable lines. It's different size neighborhoods can be added to it now. I'm sure the city manager can tune up my language a little bit on here, but this is to extend that agreement for another 20 years with Spectrum, which is a component of the existing contract.
Further comments from Counselor Jones?
Thank you, Your Honor. I do appreciate that we're getting more density per linear mile, which is something we've been asking for a long time, so I thank staff for that. Everyone knows I've had concerns with franchise fees over the years, but I think this is this is about to become a dinosaur. It's kind of fading away as everyone's going to different technologies instead of cable TV. Especially the fact that they're still running copper through the city, when everyone else is able to stream via glass and everything else. With that saying, I think we should approve this and let it just take its place, and eventually it's not even gonna happen anymore. But while it's here, let's look forward to it.
Thank you.
Just clarify the density question.
Yes, thank you.
So this agreement, the cable TV system would extend to areas where there are 20 dwelling units or more per mile of the cable system, which is an increase from the previous density requirement of 15 units per mile. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
I said that was good. That's not good.
No.
It's not actually favorable, but because we've already extended cable to the majority of the community, it's not likely to have an impact.
Seeing no further comments or questions? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Our next item coming out of Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee was a communication from Jada Carlin. It's a concern over the impact of parking ticket rates on small businesses as well as their employees. Recommendation is on a 5-0 roll call vote. The Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee recommends the communication relative to a concern over the impact of ticket rates and for employees in downtown businesses be referred to the city manager and have her bring back proposals to the committee.
Councilor Remy for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
Councilor Remy made the motion and Councilor Chadbourne seconded. Councilor Remy.
Thank you. I think this one's pretty straightforward, but there were quite a few folks that came in to talk to FOP about the different concerns around parking, especially how it impacts the business on Main Street. There were concerns around the prices for tickets. There were concerns around safety when walking to the larger lots that do have longer limits on them. So if you're working up here at the stage and you have to get all the way down to Gilboa Ave late at night, the safety of that walk, especially when you're carrying your tips with you. So different pieces around that, as well as overall just the hours of enforcement were part of the conversation as well. So it was a good conversation. I'm excited to see what comes back from it.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor? Motion carries. That'll come back.
Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee report relative to the release of non-public minutes. On a vote of 5-0 roll call vote, the Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee recommends the City Council amend its previously adopted policy on the release of non-public minutes to satisfy the statutory obligation under RSA 91A to review previously adopted non-public minutes for a determination as to whether the circumstances for sealing the non-public minutes no longer apply, and that such review and determination of the release occur annually in January of the 10th year from the year in which the non-public minutes were sealed.
Councilor Remy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Remy, seconded by Councilor Lake. Councilor Remy for the committee.
Thank you very much. So this is to help clarify our process on the non-public minutes. There was a little bit of confusion at the last one where we were trying to review some very recent minutes, and it was really confusing. So this will clarify the process to only review the older minutes, the 10-year-old ones. So, thank you.
Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee report relative to the Keene Transfer Station contract for transportation and disposal. On a 5-0 roll call vote, the Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee recommends the manager be authorized to do all things necessary to execute a contract with Waste Management New Hampshire to provide transportation and disposal services for refuse received at the Keene Transfer Station for a period of 5 years with options to renew for additional years beginning January 1, 2025.
Counselor Remy for a motion again.
Thank you. Move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
Made by Counselor Remy, seconded by Counselor Filio. Counselor Remy for the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is our waste management contract up at the transfer station. So there was an RFP done to look at this. We have received one response from Waste Management and looking to extend for another 5 years. So with some options to extend.
Question from Counselor
No.
Greenwald.
No, comment.
Comment.
Thank you. I'm going to be voting against this. I realize that there's an overwhelming majority in favor. There was an RFP issued, I agree. It has been a lot of years since anyone else responded to this, and I think we need to go out maybe a little wider to try to solicit more bids. Waste Management has some business practices that I have a problem with in terms of residents being able to terminate at will, which they cannot do, and a number of other issues. We just need someone else in the game. So it was put out there. I don't know how aggressively it was advertised or just what. I did confirm that the other firm that I thought was going to respond was aware, but they did not respond. But there's more than two in the area. So please, how long is this contract? 5?
It's a 5-year contract with options for future renewals.
Well, okay, I've been around a long time, and so is Waste Management. Thank you.
Counselor Madison.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Counselor Greenwald is correct that there are more than 2 haulers in the area, but as far as you need a place to bring garbage to, and in that regard, there's only 2. So we can pick another hauler, and then we can have to pay more disposal fees for them to bring it to another company's facility, or we can pick, one of the 2 that run facilities, or go with Mount Carberry all the way up in Berlin. But this is going to be a growing issue over the next few years. So, we've put it off for 5 years. In 5 years, we're gonna have to start making some hard decisions about what we do with our trash as we get fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer places to put it.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor. Manager?
Yeah, I think that if we put it out again, we're not going to get anyone else to bid on it. And the reason for that is there are 2 very large hauling companies. And, Waste Management and Kinsella have been buying up the smaller haulers. And for us to get favorable pricing, we need one of the larger haulers. And so I do think that, we went through the appropriate process and we have a fair contract moving forward with Waste Management.
And Counselor Haas.
Thank you, Your Honor. Question for Councilor Remy or City Manager. Cost increases with this new contract and escalation over time? What are they?
I have a spreadsheet, but I'm going to ask Don Lucier, our Public Works Director, to also come up in case I am not getting it correct. Let me see. Don, do you have the cost off the top of your head?
Yeah, so the T&D rate that they're proposing, they actually offered us 2 different rates, and this is sort of getting to the negotiate part of the negotiate and execute. They offered us one rate based on what we put in the proposal. That would be $105 a ton for the transportation and disposal of waste from our facility up to their landfill. They also offered us a lower rate of $100 per ton if we were willing to give them a lower rate on the gate fee that we charge them for the waste that they bring into the facility. So, Duncan and I have been looking at those options and trying to figure out what makes the most sense, for the city, based on different scenarios, number of tons that they could deliver, number of tons that they're obligated to deliver to the facility and whatnot. The 5-year contract does have a 4% per year escalation in that fee. So each year it would go up 4%, from wherever we started.
The increase, is that an increase over what we're paying now on the past contract?
I
10%?
believe it is, yes. Yeah.
Any feel for,
I don't know our current rate that we're paying them. I sorry, should have known that.
It's information that can be provided after the meeting.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't change the nature of the motion that's in front of us, so, Manager, you can just get back to us.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks.
If there are no other questions, motions before us, all in favor? That's 11. And all those opposed? It is 2.
I wasn't letting him go down the ship by himself.
Motion carries 11 to 2. Clerk, read the next motion.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to the 2025 flyover and city base map update. On a vote of 5-0, roll call vote, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a contract with a selected firm, Kasura International, Inc., for their professional services, and should negotiations fail, allow for negotiations with the next highest-ranked firms in order.
Council Remy for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
Moved by Council Remy, seconded by Councilor Lake. Council Remy.
Thank you very much. So this one is to update the visuals for our GIS mapping. So it would be a flyover where they remap everything. We're gonna get a little more detail, a little more accuracy than we've had in the past. Potentially be able to do some of those cool 3D buildings, things like that on our map so we can see what that looks like. I did confirm our GIS coordinator is not gonna be able to go for the ride-along on the plane, I asked. But other than that, it should be fun. We voted unanimously in support. Hope you do too.
Okay. Motion's on the table. Seeing no questions, I'll just relate, I talked with the manager about this. This is the preliminary step to the 5-year reassessment that will occur the year after this is completed.
You want me to add a little bit to that?
Certainly.
Yeah, so we do use this information as part of the update to our tax maps. And so we do a flyover every 5 years, but the second round, so at the end of the 10-year period, we do a more detailed one, and that is what this is.
Councilor Haas.
thank you, Your Honor, and my apologies for speaking so much tonight. This is so important. I'm sure it's going to pass. You all get it. This affects so many more ways other than just tax mapping, and Councilor Madison certainly could speak to it. I hope he doesn't. I hope I cover it for him. But from my experience in the insurance industry, this is right there, smack on it. It'll help with traffic planning. It'll help with everything we're trying to do. So I trust we'll all vote for it.
Thank you. All right, motion's on the table. All those in favor? And it is unanimous. Thank you.
And before I read this one, the tax collector came up before the meeting started with a revision on recommendation number 1, which is to remove the parcel identified at 53 Starling Street from this motion. So I'll incorporate that.
One Schultz. Schultz, the highlighted.
Who says 53 Starling?
I have I think I have, mine is highlighted as 1 Schultz, said shall be removed from the tax deeding list. And the reason for that is we were able to come to a payment arrangement with them late today.
I think we're going to have an amendment to this motion in any case, so. Councilor Remy for a motion.
I am going to make an amendment right after I get a second on this, but move to carry out the intent of the recommendations recommendation 1 of the committee report.
Yeah, I know what it is.
Moved by Counselor Remy, seconded by Counselor Chadbourne, and Counselor Remy.
Thank
Wait,
you.
wait, I didn't hear any of that.
I
How
would-
could this be happening? Wait a minute.
Counselor Remy's made the motion.
Let's
Counselor
make sure
Chadbourne-
I'll look for a nod from the back that I get this right. But
Chad,
move
second.
to amend this motion to move the property at 1 Schultz Court, or 1 Schultz Street from the second list to the first list.
Second.
And so to clarify, what that does is it moves it from tax deeding to a tax deed waiver to allow the payment arrangement.
And a second? I heard a second?
Thank you. And the intent of this is to align with, for the purposes of the amendment, is to align with the current status of these. This is, as everybody knows, an unfortunate part of our annual responsibilities. So,
And so for clarification, Counselor, we have 3 properties that are for our consideration at this point, because in your motion, you
No, that's the second
excluded-
part. I'm on the first part.
Very good. For clarification, we are on the first, on page 2 at the top.
And we've added 1 Schultz Street.
We've added 1 Schultz to the initial list of the tax deed waiver list. That's
Would
the
you-
amendment that's on
That
the
is
floor.
the
Yeah.
amendment. Remove it from page 2, put it on page 1.
Yes.
Everyone follows? Okay. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Counselor Remy for a motion.
The main motion now with that adjustment, just as I mentioned before, this is one of those processes that we unfortunately have to deal with every year of the tax deeding process. This first list we're going to vote on is the list that we're actually issuing waivers for to allow them to continue with their payment plans as designed.
With, with the amended.
Yeah, the amended
list.
list, yep,
So,
which has passed.
Okay, we are on the second list.
No, you have a vote. For a vote
I know.
on that.
We have not voted
On the first list.
on the first list. We just voted on the amendment.
Right.
So now the main motion is before us. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. We good?
So now we're on the second recommendation, which reads, on a roll call vote, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the execution of tax deeds for the following properties, excluding 31 Oriole Avenue, and then, and also this Schultz Street would come off.
Which
Yeah, which you just did.
Well, I think I have to amend it as well in this one.
On this one, okay. So excluding 31 Oriole Avenue and excluding 1 Schultz Street. No.
I'm going to amend it to do that, to make it more clear, but,
Okay.
or less clear maybe, but.
So Counselor Remy with a motion.
All right, I move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Remy and seconded by Counselor Chadbourne. Counselor Remy for the committee.
All right, I move to amend the tax deed list to remove 1 Schultz Street as it's been moved. Second. Thank you.
And do note that there's a second item that was removed previously by the committee.
Yep, as discussed in the motion.
Okay, any further questions? We have the amendment on the floor. All those in favor of the amendment? The amendment's carried. Any further comment on the main motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, so now we are at a memorandum from the Finance Director Treasurer relative to acceptance of donations. And this is referring to the holiday luncheon. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
It's been one of those nights.
I know.
turn to the manager for her report.
Very brief comments this evening. I have mentioned this before, but also for the public's sake, in an effort to improve communication with both our employees and the public, I'm piloting a podcast with our AV and extraordinaire. I don't know what her real title is, but she is fabulous at everything AV related. Very funny. Asa Kramer. So she's got the voice for this. We did our first one after the last council meeting, and we'll be recording our second one tomorrow. And we will discuss and review decisions made by the council the night before, and the goal is this will be placed, available for the public, but also this will be placed to a new SharePoint site. So right now, the city has an intranet site where we share information with our employees. It's a hub. And we're moving to a SharePoint site. And on that SharePoint site, we're adding a city manager's corner or city manager something, where we're going to put memos that I write, managers' updates from council meetings, and also record these recorded podcasts. We'll see if no one listens to them, we're not going to continue it. So this is a pilot. We'll see how this goes. But the SharePoint hub is intended to reduce paper use and streamline processes and help employees quickly find HR-related forms. Our goal is to automate some of these forms, enabling them to be routed automatically to the appropriate person and the appropriate department. The SharePoint site will also, I just discussed, the City Manager tab will have this other information. I have drafted 2 memos for the upcoming Paycheck News, which will also be posted there. One memo is explaining the evolution of the Assistant City Manager roles to the Deputy City Manager structure and a description of their duties. And the second memo is discussing contracted services with employees. So these are contracted part-time employees and how we utilize them for specific purposes and projects and training. Effective January 1st, I also want to let you know, Will Schaffman, who's in the audience tonight, is going to be relocated to our IT department. He's currently housed in community development, but his services really are for the entire city, not just for planning and zoning, and he does a lot of great work for the city. And so the IT department has a work order system, and we will be using that system for GIS services, and that will help us better focus and prioritize and track the work that Will does, because there's a ton that really could be done with GIS that we just really haven't tapped into yet. And so I think this move for Will is going to be a great one, and I'm excited about it. And then lastly, I wanted to let you know there was a flyer that came in. NHMA, so New Hampshire Municipal Association, and UNH Carsey School of Public Policy have teamed up to offer up to a 20% tuition discount for eligible employees, appointed and elected officials who are affiliate groups of NHMA, which we are. And so if anyone would like more information about that, let me know and I will send you that flyer.
Okay, thanks for your report. Moving along.
Before us is a memo from the Finance Director Treasurer relative to acceptance donations. These were given by Brewbakers in part of the holiday luncheon.
Okay. Councilor Remy for the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to accept the donation totaling $225 and that the city manager be authorized to use the donation in the manner specified by the donor, and to thank them very much.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Seconded by Councilor Chadbourne.
Yep.
Seeing none, thank you to Brewbakers. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
We have before us a memorandum coming in from the Conservation Commission recommending a discussion about invasive species education and management.
And we will refer that to Municipal Services, Facilities, and Infrastructure Committee.
This is a memorandum coming in from the Joint Planning Board, Planning License and Development Committee, which is returning to the City Council a communication from the mayor relative to blade signs.
And we'll refer that to Planning Licenses and Development Committee.
Our next on behalf of the Partner City Committee is a resignation of Gregory Kleiner, who's been on the Partner City Committee since 2021.
Counselor Greenwald for a motion.
Move to accept the resignation and express appreciation for his years of service.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Greenwald, seconded by Counselor Bosley. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carries.
We then have a Planning Licenses and Development Committee report. It's a more time report relative to the ordinance on licenses and permits.
More time is granted. Moving on.
You mentioned this issue earlier on our agenda. It's from Jared Goodell. It is a formal petition and ordinance relative to an amendment to the zoning ordinance for interior side setbacks in the downtown edge zone, along with ordinance O-2024-24.
We'll refer that to the joint planning board and PLD committees.
Now returning back to Finance, Organization, and Personnel, we have a report relative to Resolution R 2024-37. It is relative to the appropriation of funds from the solid waste to the FY25 operating budget. Committee is recommending adoption, and that takes us to Resolution R 2024-37, a resolution relating to the appropriation of funds from the solid waste fund balance to the FY25 operating budget.
Counselor Remy for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move to adopt Resolution R 2024-37. Second.
Motion made by Counselor Remy, seconded by Counselor Lake.
Thank you much, Mr. Mayor. So this is to move from a contract position that's currently working about 10 hours a week up at the solid waste facility, moving it to a full-time position. The volume they're seeing up there has grown pretty substantially, as well as to get the same tonnage from plastic. They have to see a lot more bottles, a lot more volume, and they have to touch all of that to get to the same weight in plastic because, as I'm sure all of you noticed, everything's getting a little thinner. So this will help with that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor Remy. Further comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Before reading this report, I wanted to bring to the council's attention that this evening we placed a new version of Resolution R 2024-39 on your desk. We saw a Scribner's error, and we wanted to correct that before you actually took your vote this evening. But we do have Resolution R 2024-39, a resolution in appreciation of Patty L. Gagnon upon her retirement.
Counselor Remy with the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Move for the adoption of Resolution R 2024-39.
Second.
Motion's made by Counselor Remy, seconded by Counselor Chadbourne. Counselor Remy.
I'm going to do my best Tom Powers with being able to present on folks. So thank you for the notes to help with this. So Patty Gagnon's career with the city began in the Administrative Services Division of the Police Department in 2004, transitioned to record specialist in 2012. In the fast-paced environment of the Bureau of Records, Patty excelled at managing a constant flow of information, quickly mastering various software systems, and becoming highly proficient. Her in-depth knowledge of prosecutorial law and court procedures, along with her professional relationships with defense attorneys, defendants, concerned parents, played a vital role in assisting the city prosecutors in being thoroughly prepared for court each day. Patty's strengths in time management, problem solving, and attention to detail proved invaluable in her interactions with both the public and internal staff. Her colleagues greatly valued her insightful ideas, thoughtful opinions, and practical solutions, which significantly contributed to the department's short and long-term goals. After more than 20 years of dedicated and honorable service to the city of Keene, Patty retired on November 8th, 2024. Please join me in wishing Patty many years of appreciation for her many years of service to the city of Keene and the greater Monadnock community.
Well done.
Good job, Tom. Thanks.
And we'll take that up at a future meeting. All those in favor of the resolution as presented, motion carries unanimously. Brings us to the end of our agenda.
And it is actually an issue that council may recall. We've actually dealt with this several times, talking about building permits on private roads and Class 6 highways. And this is a resolution that would amend the current council policy. It is Resolution R 2024-43, a resolution relating to development on Class 6 highways and private roads.
And we'll refer that to Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee. Now we have reached the end of
Good try.
our, meeting. No further business before the council. We are adjourned.